episode 136 of the Monday Morning Critic. Today's guest has been in such wonderful movies/shows as Carrie and Greatest American Hero. He is absolutely, without question, unequivocally one of my favorite actors on the planet. He is William Katt. William, how is life treating you? How is everything going?
Oh, wow. I don't know how to follow that introduction. I'm sure to let down a lot of people.
So before we get into anything, right, I'm on eBay and I'm just looking at, I just like I do. And I have to say the Greatest American Hero figure ranges from $700 to almost $4,000. I find that amazing.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
We should have bought a whole bunch of them. I could have put my kids through college, you know?
So, I have to say, like, and I mentioned this to you, you've been so kind. People don't, the exchange that we've had off air, you're a very sweet person. This is Memorial Day. My dad was a veteran. We bonded watching you, and I don't think it's I'm not a very religious person, but I don't think it's any coincidence that you and I are speaking today on Memorial Day because, like I said, my dad was a veteran. So I cannot thank you enough, William.
Well, my pleasure, man.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
So I have to say, there's so much I want to ask you. First off, I'm watching the movie Shazam. Okay. And I'm like, I've seen this before. I think William Katt did a lot of this stuff, but I'm not going to be too negative here. I don't know.
Well, this is kind of unfair because I didn't see it, although I wanted to,
Yeah, and I don't say that to crap on anybody else. I say it more of a compliment to you and how really truly underrated Greatest American Hero was. But I don't want you to think this entire interview is Greatest American Hero because I promise it's not, but I just feel like your presence and your role in that character is more remembered than even you realized.
Oh, goodness sakes.
Yeah. So what I want to ask you, so, there's so much I want to say. Your mom is the amazing Barbara Hale. She must have been so proud of you. Talk about, you had a chance to act with your mom. Is that very special for you? Having lost, course. Yeah. So it's an obvious question. I shouldn't have phrased it that way, but just talk a little bit about that, William.
I was very lucky, my relationship with my mom and my dad started very early on a set. Some of my first memories are my dad on the set of Kit Carson when he was doing that Western with Don Diamond.
Yes.
And then, I had a lot of good memories on the set of Perry Mason when I was a kid because my mom started that in the mid-'50s. And so it was a thrill for me always to get out of school and get up early and go to the set and drink coffee and eat donuts. And I became very friendly with the entire cast, and a great thrill to me to work with my mom doing the Perry Mason specials from the mid 80s, 85, I think, to 89. I worked with her on that. But before that, to digress for a second, she worked with me she played my mom 3 times on Big Wednesday. With Jan Michael Vincent and Gary Busey. She played my mom. And had a great scene with Jan Michael Vincent, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
And where he tells her that he didn't piss in her steam iron. It was a very, very funny scene.
Yeah.
And she worked with me twice on Greatest American Hero. And then I got she played my mom on that, and then twice, and then for 4 years I got to work with her on the Masons, and that was just lovely.
Yeah, pretty special moments. I would wager. And is that true? I mean, doing my research, that Raymond Burr had to call you to get you on the show. I mean, not that I'm implying that you're this tough guy to get along with, but Raymond Burr and this stoic voice, he calls you up. I mean, are you surprised at that?
Well, I was because they had called me a few times. The show was at NBC, and they had called me a few times to do the show, and I was my first love has always been the theater, and I was on tour with a national tour of Pirates of Penzance, playing the Pirate King with the late great George Rose. and I really was happy to be doing theater, and so I had turned it down a few times, and then Raymond got on the phone, and I knew at that point that my mom was connected and was going to do the show, and he was very convincing and funny about it, but in his very deep basso profundo voice, he asked me to come. He said, "Young man, I want you to come and play this part," and so it's hard to say no to Raymond Burr when he's being Perry Mason, you know?
Yeah. and, you know, before I get to the marvelous and fantastic Piper Laurie, take me to Orange Coast College. Take me through your early years where you think, you know what, maybe this acting thing is worth pursuing.
I went to Orange Coast College mainly to surf,
yep,
and to chase women, to chase girls, and I followed a girl. The long story is that I'll truncate and make it short. Was I followed a girl into the auditorium, and there was acting class going on, an advanced acting class. And it turns out that the teacher was a dear old friend of my mom and my dad's that we didn't even know was a professor at the college there.
Wow.
His name was Jack Holland, and we met at the end of the class. That was a scene class, and we were 10 weeks into the semester, and he let me make up 10 weeks worth of work and stay in the class. And from that point on, I mean, he was very influential. I did a couple plays at the college, but mainly I started working at South Coast Repertory for David Ems and Martin Benson, I spent 4 seasons there on and off, and they, of course, the theater went on to become a very well respected regional theater and win several Tony Awards for their productions over the years.
Yeah, and then you eventually make your way or make an acquaintance with Piper Laurie, who's nothing short of amazing. Who's not only who's not only a phenomenal, you know, yeah. I don't want to say, I say mentor is a fair word, but also a very, very good friend to you.
She's just lovely. I actually, when we were working on Carrie together, I actually didn't meet her on that except in passing. Because we didn't have any scenes together, as you recall, in the film.
Right.
Other than the one scene where I come to the door to invite Carrie to the prom. But I just met her very, very briefly. But we became very good friends years later. We were both sitting on the board of directors for Screen Actors Guild.
Wow.
And so I would see her several times a week for several years. And we became very good friends. And I just saw her a couple weeks ago. And she was just as lovely as she always is. She's wonderful to the fans, I might add.
Yes, and for those that are listening, Piper Laurie was just to put a name and a face together, was Carrie's mother, Margaret White, in the movie Carrie, which is absolutely phenomenal. Let me ask you, William, and I've asked a few other guests this, what is the fascination with remakes? Why would you even want to touch a movie like Carrie? I don't get it. And again, I'm not trying to say bad things about some other people, but I just feel like I have to believe there's enough fresh ideas out there where we're not going after classics to remake them.
I don't know what would other than the name recognition.
Right.
The brand name recognition bears some sort of impetus for producers to try and recreate something. You can't argue that Chloe Moretz and Juliana Moore are not spectacularly gifted actresses.
Oh, they're phenomenal. Absolutely.
And the director, whose name, forgive me, escapes me, wonderful director. So I could see why all the powers that be wanted to remake something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I didn't like it as much, but it's probably not fair for me to impose my thoughts on it, because I'm too close to it.
No, and that's a great point. And you're not. You're being very positive, and you're right. 2 phenomenal actors, great direct. I get it. Wonderful cast, but it's just like, it seems to me that even in a best case, William, that's just not gonna. It's not gonna go as I don't know, not as good as people think. I just think there's so many fresh ideas, so many wonderful screenwriters that we could.
Well, let me put it on another. Why did they remake songs? I mean, you have great songs out there. Walk This Way. Why did they remake that song? There's so many great songs that they've remade.
True. I totally agree. I'm on the same boat with that as well. I totally agree. I feel like there's so much fresh content that we don't need to be recycling this. I don't know. I just, especially classics. Yeah, you're right. It's a comparable point. Very, very well said. What are the other things?
One thing I don't see writers rewriting a story that's already been written. I don't see that happening and saying, "Oh, I'm going to put my own spin on this story."
Right. Right. No.
Screenplays, yes, but not novels or short stories. I don't see that happening. Do you know why that doesn't occur?
No, I mean, that's a great point. I don't, and it's funny that you say that because I have a question that kind of leads to that. I wanted to talk a little bit about Greatest American Hero, and okay. But I want to get to that in a little bit. But one of the things that, and it kind of goes to your point here, is that I just saw a movie called Brightburn, and it's basically Superman. If Superman was an evil, sadistic, just bad kid that grew up to be evil instead of affable and wonderful Clark Kent, right? And and you guys dealt with a lawsuit, and you guys were so far from Superman with DC, and it's like this movie is on a farm. It is Superman with the title changed, and it's like, I don't know. We talk about writing and not being, writing further outside the box. I don't know. It really made me mad because I really feel like that sabotaged a show that should have gone maybe 5, 6, 7 years longer than it did because it was so wonderful. And
I remember at the time Stephen telling me, because Warner Brothers really jumped on it big time as some sort of copyright infringement, and they really put the kibosh on any kind of merchandising that Cannell had.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. And by the way, I might add to people listening, DC lost that case, by the way, just so we're being... Yeah, and, I want to ask you before we get to that, I was watching an audition, and I got to say, you've done some marvelous things. There's a big picture when it comes to William Katt. It's not just, for those of you listening, it's not just Greatest American Hero, Carrie. It's enormous, and you're still kicking ass in the acting world. So, and you are certainly doing more than acting as well. And I wanted to say that, there's an audition with you and Kurt Russell. People are aware of it. I think I've watched it 3 or 4 times. What an amazing audition. And let's get right to it. How close were you to Luke Skywalker, and was it your decision not to kind of go into that role? Because who saw Star Wars being this popular, right?
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think at the time, I may have mentioned it in the past, but George Lucas and Brian De Palma they held those casting sessions together, and I think they saw every up and coming young actor and actress in Hollywood. So and I just was lucky enough to get to be selected to work with Kurt and do that reading, which I thought we did a really good job.
I agree on
it, but you can't argue with the fact that Mark Hamill was just not. He was perfectly cast in that role. Sure.
But if let's say Mark Hamill has never existed, and I don't mean that in a weird. I would have been, and I'm an enormous Star Wars fan. I would have been A-okay with William Katt being Luke Skywalker and Kurt Russell being, Han Solo. I would have been 100% okay with that.
Yeah, well. Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah, I get it. But I just feel like even some of the actors casted
and Kurt Russell. Listen, we don't have to. We don't have to lament Kurt Russell's career. He's done all right.
Yeah, he's done some good things, but as have you, though, right? And I'm not trying to be like a kiss ass, but as have you.
Yeah, I've done some okay things. I'm okay.
I would go a little bit more than okay, but even people that got roles in that movie, William, it's just like even Alec Guinness for a while, just. He never saw the greatness in Star Wars. He was just kind of like this, the movie with wizards and letters you read that he wrote. He still never got it. And he died like I mean, he not too long ago. I think it was 2000, which is maybe it is long ago. It was 20 years, but still, he lived long after the Star Wars phenomenon was launched. So, who could have known it was going to be what it is today?
Nobody.
No. So I have to say, I had a guest on. I want to say a month ago, who was on the cast of Greatest American Hero, Michael Pare.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he is absolutely Tony Villancana. I mean, he is in the middle of the interview. He's like, "All right, Derek, I gotta bounce." Like that's him. That's who that guy is, and he was just such a nice guy. But yeah, that is who he is. I mean, there's no beating around the bush there.
Yeah. He's a great guy, and he was studying to be a cook before he got on that before he became an actor. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did know that, and I brought it up to him. Yeah, it's an amazing story. Speaking of amazing stories, you don't get enough credit. Like, people see this wonderful show, Greatest American Hero, and they see you as the hero. I saw it a little differently. Like, I saw the great hero, but I also saw a guy who was so wonderful with a challenging bunch of kids. And you and I were talking off air, and I swear my right hand to God that, and I'm not overly religious, so it may take away from it, but I'm going to say that I've been working with kids for easily close to 25 years, and I'm telling you, it's because of Ralph Hinckley and the way he treated those kids. I swear to God.
Well, that's nice. I'm gonna go in and tell my wife to treat me better.
But no, but that's what people I think loved about this show was like, here's this guy who's dealing with these tough kids. Here's a guy who is trying in his after his time that he has to himself make the world a better place. It is such a beautiful, beautiful story, William, and years later, people still love the show more than ever. Does it surprise? I don't want to say surprise because that would imply that it was never something fantastic. But does it ever are you ever like second guessing or looking at it in a different way? Where like, my God, it really was a phenomenal show.
Well, I don't know. I mean, every once in a while, you get lucky in life, and that definitely, I was in the right place at the right time, and paired up with the right cast, and it was just kind of lightning in a bottle. And I think you see that in all kinds of shows, whether it's Friends or Seinfeld or any of the newer shows. I mean, it's just once in a while it happens, and it's kind of kismet, and that's how I felt about that show. I was in the right place at the right time with the right cast, the right team of creative people, and God bless the late great Steve Cannell and Bob Culp. I mean, it was just terrific.
Yeah, and it was awesome writing. It was awesome acting. It was just great across the board. Topped off with what is probably the best song to precede a show in the history of television. Opinion.
I was gonna say I don't know which was more popular, the show or the song, because the left hand helped the right hand, so to speak. And the show lasted. Its legacy lasted far longer than it rightfully should have, and I think that was because of what happened on Seinfeld with George's answering machine, and then Peter on Family Guy. Seth MacFarlane pay homage to it, and it was just one of those phenomena, that just It came and it lasted, and the song is something. It was a Billy Idol just this last fall. I saw him singing at one of his concerts. He was singing in that song.
Wow!
Who would think that Billy Idol would sing that song?
Right.
Right.
And what people don't realize, and obviously you know this, is, and we mentioned a little bit of this, is how much bad luck this show had. Whether it's Reagan's, attempted assassination. I mean. To be honest, and again, I'm not trying to bait you and say bad things, but I felt like ABC did not know how to handle this show. They did not. It just was not handled properly because, again, I might be biased. I felt it had 5 more years easy into this show.
I think that we made. Thinking back on it in hindsight, we may have made some enemies because the network wanted us to chase monsters through the sewers, and I know that Bob Culp and I wanted to use it, and Steve Cannell, in fact, we wanted to use it more as to speak to a platform to speak about social norms and about societal problems and issues that we could kind of poke fun at and be a little bit sarcastic with. And that was not what the network was interested in.
Right. No. And I thought I read where NBC bought it, but then really did nothing with it, right? Is that kind of what happened with it, with the progress of the show? I'm
not sure of that. I know they brought a girl to try and continue on the show, and I did a short episode. I read with her, and I was in a very short episode that they did with a girl that never made it to air. And by the way, I think that recently they did a reboot last year or year before last, where they tried it with a girl.
Right.
My good friend George Wendt was even a regular on the series, and it didn't go for some reason, and I don't know why. I would have liked to have seen it go, because it deserved to be back on the air, but I don't know what happened. I think it was the showrunner from Supergirl was heading the whole thing up.
Right.
And do you know anything about that?
No. Well, I know that. I think that the show did not take off. No pun intended. It's just I think people have a tough time. And this might not be the reason, but I think people have a tough time taking legendary shows and putting a spin on them, right? And it's not about having a female superhero. I'm not getting there, but I think people love the original so much that it's very difficult to try to, like Battlestar Galactica, William, had the same type, but it did have some success. Had the same type of issues where it was not the same characters. It was another character, and I think people have a tough time accepting vintage shows in a different light, and maybe I'm off with that.
Yeah, could be. I'm waiting for them to thinking about redoing The Big Bang Theory.
Boy, my God.
While it's still fresh,
But I know what I love about, one of the things I love about you is you're very good to fans. I've heard stories. I cover a lot. I'm flying out to Seattle in a little over a month to cover the Marvel Con. But a lot of people are just in love with, you and your character. And I know you've done a lot of cons, and my first question is, how do you like doing cons? Do you like being there? Do you like? Sometimes you must hear the same things repeatedly, but when it comes from a place of honesty and kindness, and people really like me, I think the world of you. Does it ever get old?
Thank you. No, the traveling does, but once I'm there, I love speaking with the fans, and people don't come to get autographs. They come to share where they were in their life and to talk about what it meant to them.
Right.
And I get to tell them what it meant to me at that particular moment. And we can talk about particular scenes and different episodes. And I really try and I really try and share what time I have with the fans, because they wouldn't be there unless they wanted to pay homage to the shows, whether it's Greatest American Hero or it's Carrie or House or one of the other things that they've seen me in. I really try and share and make it a shared experience for both of us.
Yeah, and I don't care if you're a doctor, a teacher, whatever. The fact that you're impacting people's lives in such a wonderful way has to mean a great deal to you, as it clearly does.
Well, one of the great things about that particular show, and so many times I've had fans come and share their stories that, they perhaps didn't have a great relationship with their parents at the time, but it was like the one show that they could all sit down as a family and watch, and everybody enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say that, and I mentioned this to you, I recently, my dad had recently passed, and I have to say my best moments are just, we used to sit down and just watch you, and he would just laugh. It's just, and I'll never be able to repay that debt of gratitude, and it comes from such a sincere place. Like, I'll never be able to thank you enough for that, William.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about a couple of your. We mentioned Michael. You mentioned Bob Culp a little bit. Talk about Bob Culp and Connie Sellecca, two very, very, very talented actors. I mean, the cast was fantastic, writing fantastic, but those two in particular.
The cast was great. I, as I said, I was in the right place at the right time, and it was just serendipity that I was there. And I met Bob. Let's talk about Bob first. I mean, I obviously knew who Bob was. Robert Culp was famous for I Spy, and he had been a very successful writer before then, and he had done some directing, and I was a little bit intimidated by him, and to be very honest, we didn't get along very well initially. I think there was some tension there on the set, but it all worked. It worked great because we shot, for the most part, we shot from beginning to end, most of that stuff. So in the beginning, when Bob Culp, when Bill Maxwell and Hinckley don't like each other, that's kind of the real vibe that was going on at the time.
Wow.
And it worked. And then we slowly got to know each other and work together. And I remember I think it was about the second week, I knocked on his trailer door and I said, "Hey, can we talk a minute?" And I walked in and I said, "We're going to be working for a long time together. Let's try and work this out so we can arrange some sort of a détente. So professionally, we can at least work together and get along." And we did. And then slowly we became fast friends over the years.
Yeah, because each of you don't seem like, have abrasive personalities. I would think you're two great actors who, have some years difference between you. But No.
Please, I can be abrasive, believe me.
Well, I mean, you're okay. So you're two good people. I'll phrase it that way. And and I think it takes time. I think forget just acting. In any position. Like I said, no matter what you do, it was a slow relationship in forming. But clearly, at the end of it, you two stood tall as friends.
Yeah. I obviously then, as now, I'm very, I'm opinionated, and I feel very confident with the choices that I make. But I'm a team player. It's like if we were doing improv together, I have certain choices that I would make, but you rely on the other actors when you're working. Acting to me has always been reacting.
Right.
You know where you have to go. You're not quite sure how you're going to get there, and you got to work with the other actors to get there. But you still have in mind where you're going.
Right.
And that's the way I've always approached what I do. And sometimes it works, and many times it does not work. I've been in many bad films as well.
William? What's a lesson early on that you now realize that you wish you knew as a younger actor? Is there something that you've learned over the years that would have really benefited you as a young? I mean, I can't tell you how many publications I've read where, up and coming actor, this wonderful, William Katt, and truth be told, is there something you learned later in life that certainly would have served you or helped serve you as a younger up and coming actor?
What would have served me as an up-and-coming actor? Well, your personal life impinges a lot. The choices you make in your personal life impinges a lot on your professional life.
Sure.
So let me call to mind what Tom Hanks once said when he was asked about what's the most important thing when you're thinking about your career. And he said, if I can quote, he said, "Choose the right partner."
That's well said, and it makes complete sense.
Yeah. So, had I been married to my wife now of 26 years at the time, it would have been a lot different story for me. But then again, I'm a much different person than I was when I was in my 20s, and because of all those things and mistakes that you make, it makes you a better person. Hopefully,
Yeah,
and a better actor. I would say I can go to places now where I couldn't go when I was in my 20s.
Sure. And, shows today, name the TV show. It has, 5, 6, 10 different directors. Forgive me for not having this down, but the Greatest American Hero, how many different directors did that have over its longevity?
Let me give credit where credit is due right here, which I don't often get a chance to give credit to, and that is Rod Holcomb, who directed the pilot, was as responsible for the tone, the initial tone of the show, as anyone, as he was as responsible for the tone of the show as Steve Cannell, as any of the writers or the producers or the editors. Just a fabulous director who had done a lot of television for Cannell in particular at the time.
Right.
And he made it so much fun on the set and had such a wickedly a twisted sense of humor that really lended itself to the show, and we kept that same tone for the 3.5 seasons that we were able to be on the air. I think we only had 5 or 6 directors a season.
Okay, so
that's all.
I have 2 questions now. Is because when you make a major motion picture, and I want to just talk briefly about Carrie after this, you're dealing with Brian De Palma, one director. Is it difficult in the television world to deal with, especially for continuation purposes? And you mentioned the wonderful director in a pilot. I get that, but for continuation purposes, is it tough to have 5 or 6 different people at the helm that I get the vision might be the same, but personality-wise, is that tough on an actor?
Yeah, I guess I guess it's there's a new pitcher on the plate every time, and you have to adjust each time you're playing with that pitcher. If I can make that analogy,
sure.
But the game is still the same, and the actors still work the same. The director comes in and he said, "Okay, how are we gonna shoot this? Where's the camera gonna be? How many shots is it gonna take to cover this scene?" But the way the game is played is always the same.
Right. No, and that's well said. You mentioned the pilot. Did you have a lot of freedom to be William Katt as far as doing your thing, or was it like by the book? No, I need
no. A very good. The first time I saw the outfit that I had to put it on when I put on the Greatest American Hero outfit, and you see me looking in the mirror, and I go, "Hello, sailor," and I kind of put a little lisp in it there, and I kind of poked fun at myself. Well, listen, it would have been politically very incorrect to do that these days, but at the time, it was very funny, and Steve Cannell put it in. We did improv. We improv'd a lot during that show, Bob and I.
Right.
And Connie.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many how many actors prefer the let's see what we trust you to be actors. Let's see what you have versus this is my vision. I need you to do this, and this, and there's no freedom from the actor's perspective. So I imagine having directors like that is an absolute breath.
It was a lot of fun on that show. The polar opposite of that was, and God rest his soul, and he was a very nice man to me, but Aaron Spelling, I did a number of his shows later on, and he was the exact opposite. He wanted every word verbatim that was printed on the page. He wanted you to use those words. You couldn't change an and to a but.
Wow.
You couldn't put a handle on a sentence. You couldn't do anything. At least I couldn't. Now, I was mainly a day player when I was working on his shows. But there was no, any kind of creative expression that you had to be done with subliminally. It couldn't be done with the text.
Help me out with that, William. Why would, as a director, I mean, it could be a head of any business or so forth, why would you not give the people you trust and hire the freedom to do what they're best at? Why would you want to manipulate that?
I don't know. I mean, if you're doing music, you bring in the great players. You bring in great players. You want that. You want them to give you what they have. You don't want to just write the music out and say, okay, you have to play this exactly as it's written.
Right. Right. No, that's well said. That's absolutely well said. And on the set of Carrie, when you're working for a guy like De Palma, you have an all-star cast, including yourself. Can you tell what makes Brian De Palma great? What is it within him that you're like, my God, this guy is just, he gets it. There's something really, really special about him.
That's like saying, what makes Matisse or
right.
Any great.
Right. No, that's fair.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Brian De Palma was always very much in his head. He doesn't need the accolades from me. He's one of our best directors. I was just lucky enough to be in one of his seminal films.
Yeah, and so let me ask you, along the same lines of what we've been saying, is a director like, because I know Martin Scorsese can be a little bit, he's probably halfway between what we've been talking about. How about a guy like Brian De Palma? Does he say, William, do your thing, or is it like, this is how I envision it, you take it from there? No. Brian Palma, we did rehearsals. Right.
We rehearsed. I rehearsed for several weeks. So did all the other actors with him. And when we were working on those scenes, there was a lot of improv going on, and changing a little bit of this and that. But he wanted to see your personality. He allowed us that. And then once we got to the set, though, he pretty much had a handle on how it was going to go. And I didn't change much from our rehearsals that we did in his apartment on Fountain back in Beverly Hills years ago. Before we started, I didn't change much of my approach to any of the scene work that we did because it was already pretty much established. And he allowed us that to be creatively, to input creatively while we were rehearsing, but
right.
not so much on the set.
Right. No, that's well said. And I'm not implying that you're not professional, but are you ever, when you have an all-star cast like you did in Carrie, does it ever become, I don't want to say intimidating, but are you ever like, do you have to, I don't want to even say pinch yourself because that's not what I'm getting at, but do you feel, is there any pressure in that situation where you look around and there's just great actors to the left, to the right, there's Brian De Palma. Is there any pressure on your end? Do you feel that? Or is it like, you know what? I deserve to be here, and no.
Yeah, at the time, no. I was a stupid kid actor, and I didn't I wasn't smart enough to know that I should be intimidated and keep my mouth shut.
Right. In a movie,
but little scenes like at the door, for instance, I'm just thinking off the cuff right now. When I was at the scene, when I go to ask the screen door, and Sissy comes to the screen door, and I asked her to go to the prom, right? And then her mama calls and she has to go away, and I say, and then she leaves. Well, Brian left the camera running, as he did so many times. You leave the camera running, and he doesn't say cut, so you have to come up with something and act. So I came up with where Tommy starts to talk to himself and says, okay, well, that's ad-libbed, and there's lots of instances like that with lots of other actors. When the director doesn't say cut, well, you're still in character, and you still have to act, and you still live in that character, and you do whatever that character is going to do. And then you have good directors like Brian De Palma that let the camera roll and capture that, and sometimes it's just terrific.
Yeah, that's really well said. And do you remember ever seeing Stephen King on set of that movie?
I don't, although PJ Souls tells me that he came one day, but I was not there.
Right. So I asked the same question to Jerry Mathers, and I think Dirk Benedict and a few others. Do you think... So I mentioned to you the scenario where, we watch these classic, wonderful television shows, We break out to TV dinner. It's a family bonding moment. There's no cell phones. There's no distraction. It's just a family unit being a family unit. Are those days gone? I mean, you have Netflix, you have Hulu, you have the technology of cell phones. Is the rare moments of what the shows like The Greatest American Hero brought to the family dynamic, are those days gone?
Gee whiz, I don't know. My kids are all grown up. I don't know. But speaking personally, I can't remember in the last 20 years sitting around a television set with my kids.
Right.
Even when they were little, Yeah,
but it was kind of a sneaky question. I mean, but it's almost like I know the answer when I ask that question. I just feel like those days are gone. I feel like families can still enjoy great television, but I feel like in that environment, in that atmosphere, it's just there was an honesty and you don't sit around and do put your virtual headsets on and sit around with your family and play the same game? No, you're absolutely right. It's well said, and I don't know. In a way, it kind of bums me out because it's like the last, and people I hated when people say, oh, it's the idiot box. It's this. It's like that's such garbage and nonsense because it really brought families closer together. They would talk about things, whether it's, I don't know, Ed Sullivan, whatever it brought people together. It was just such a wonderful, wonderful moment. And I don't know, I'm a little bummed. I hate to be a half-empty kind of person, but I'm a little bummed those days are gone, William.
Yeah. Well, in days before that, people would sit around the radio and listen to radio shows,
Very true, very true. So
when my mom and dad were growing up, that's what they'd do. They'd all sit around a radio and listen. So you're still doing your thing as an actor. It's absolutely wonderful. I enjoy your work. I do once in a while. Yes, I do.
I love your work as an actor. I enjoy watching you. And my question here is, do you ever find yourself in the role of mentor? So in other words, whereas a person like Piper Laurie was very meaningful to you and perhaps, teaching you some of the ropes or just talking shop, right? Do you find yourself in that position with younger actors?
I used to. In the last 10 years, not so much anymore, because as I've kind of, taken a seat closer to the back of the room these days. But I used to go speak and I'd go and mentor kids at schools and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I had an actor on 2 weeks ago. His name was Paul Calderon, and he said, you know what the problem is with younger actors, and he wasn't being disrespectful. He said, the mouth works more than the ears do. And I don't care what profession you're in. I totally get what he's saying. People they don't want to know. Like, there's no teacher like experience. And I feel, William, like everyone wants to be a great actor. Everyone wants to. But there's a huge difference with those that do want to and go that extra mile with those that are just, you know what? I know what I'm doing. Let me just finish texting my friend here and I'll get back to the scene. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too negative, but...
I don't know if that's. I don't know if that's really fair to some of the actors that I've seen coming up. I mean, there are some just marvelous young actors.
Oh, I completely. I agree. I'm not saying that's the majority of actors, but I feel like if you want to be great in any profession, there's a certain population, I suppose, in anything, right? And there's a lot. You're right. There's a lot of great actors out there, but to me, if I was on set with you, with whomever, I would be like a sponge. Like, just tell me what you can tell me. Like, I don't know. I would do my homework.
And I'd be trying to sap all of your ideas out of you.
Right.
That's what I'd be doing.
Right. But that's what an effective creative environment is. It's like, okay, what works for you, what works for me, and I guess I probably shouldn't have thrown age in there because it makes it a bit one-sided. But seriously, no matter, regardless of age, people can, especially in acting, where you guys can feed off each other and help each other out. To me, that would seem, very beneficial, to say the least.
Yeah, I worked for a lot of the last 10 years, I worked as a line producer with a company, my dear friend Chris Foligno and his company. We shot many toy commercials for Disney and Mattel, Hasbro, and MGA, and we just did a lot of work. And the great thing about that company, it was a small company, but he employed young people and guys my age, and there was a great the environment was terrific because everybody shared young ideas and tried and true ideas, and it produced some wonderful results.
No, yeah. And I completely agree, and that's well said. And you know, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is not so much along the mentor line is, have you ever taught acting, whether it's at a college or somebody hires you privately? Do you is that a road you've gone down?
Well, I've directed a few things. I suppose that's akin to that.
Sure.
You know, I've directed a couple films and some theater, and so in working with the actors, I suppose you are in fact doing that. You know, helping actors discover themselves, or discover a character.
Yeah, and I had a screenwriter on, and he said that, he said you can always tell those who have worked in theater. Do you feel that theater, William, is essential for actors? Do you feel like it's something that should be mandatory for actors?
No, I don't think there's any one way. I think it's like a musician, you know, sometimes you can't explain how someone is just born a prodigy, you know, and other times you have to work very, very hard at it and school yourself for long periods of time to find those same results. Same thing with an actor. You know, some actors they just walk in front of a camera and it all works. You know,
yeah.
And other actors have to go to the, you know, myself. I'm speaking about myself. I was drawn to the theater, and I love that training. And my favorite part of acting is that month or so that you get in rehearsal to figure out the puzzle. You know, what makes this character work? What makes this play work? You know, I love that period of time. It's a sad part of my life that I don't get to do as much theater anymore as I would like to do, because for years and years and years I would do at least one play a year.
Right.
And I miss that.
How do you like being behind the camera directing? How do you like being in that type of role?
I liked it, but it's very hard.
Right.
Physically, it's very hard. You're spending a long time on a project, and it's just physically very hard, particularly for film. As a director in the theater, I enjoyed that much more because I just like the whole process. But on doing television or film, not so much. I didn't like it so much, and I don't think I was. You know, I wasn't cut out to do that. There's a lot of other really, really wonderful directors, and it's like flying a plane. Some people should fly a plane, and some people should not.
That's very true. That's very true. You're right. You're absolutely right. Did you ever hear from? I have a few questions left. Thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time. I can't thank you enough for this, William.
Yeah, well, hurry it up. All right.
All right. Did you ever hear from teachers with your role of the Greatest American Hero? Because I don't think that can be stated enough. How great you were with those kids and how naturally it looked. It never looked to me. I get it. It's acting. I understand that. But there was something really, really special and sweet about that rapport. Did you hear from teachers at that time where it's like, because you were teaching a tough bunch of kids, talk a little bit about that.
Well, I heard from teachers at the time. You know, right. I got a lot of fan letters at the time, and even now when I have third generation fans coming up to me. So grandparents are bringing their grandkids dressed as Greatest American Hero, and they talk about what it meant to them growing up and what it meant to their kids and then to their grandkids. And a lot of these people have been teachers and have been special ed teachers in particular. And I think it gave them motivation to be better at what they do and to really try and connect on a personal level. And one of the great things about that show was that it was not so much a show about heroic acts, superhero feats of wonder, but it was about the humanity of Ralph Hinckley.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Completely. One could argue the real superhero was the guy who didn't have the red suit on, right? Because that's where he becomes the real. I don't know. There's just so many facets to that show that are beyond description. I don't think they'll ever get enough credit for that. I truly don't believe that. Nor the cast as well. I think it's a classic, and I think that's the show, that one show in history that'll live on truly throughout television history.
Well, thank you. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you so much. I hope the fans haven't found me too boring.
It took me 2 years to track you down, William. It's been worth every single second of it. Thank you so much for your work as an actor, as a human being. You will never, ever know how much it's been appreciated, and especially thank you for today. You made a fanboy's dream come true. You made a podcaster's dream come true. But most importantly, William, thank you for providing a forum that allowed a father and a son just to absolutely enjoy your work, enjoy the company of each other, and just have a lifetime full of memories. I know if my father was still here, he would have thanked you as well. Thank you so much, William.
She packed my bags last night, pre-flight. 0 hour, 9 a.m. And I'm gonna be high as a kite by then. I miss the earth so much, I miss my wife. It's lonely out in space on such a timeless flight. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse out here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse out here alone. Mars ain't the kind of place to raise your kids. In fact, it's cold as hell, and there's no one there to raise them. If you did, and all the science I don't understand, it's just my job 5 days a week. A rocket man, a rocket man. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, no, And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna